If you've been told that looking fit is the same thing as being healthy, it's time to question that premise. Maybe you've tried cutting calories, hitting the gym harder, or chasing a lower number on the scale, only to end up more tired, more frustrated, and still wondering why you don't feel better. The truth is, real health isn't about those extremes. It's about having energy, balanced hormones, strength that you can use, and a body that supports you for the long haul. Today, we're exploring the difference between training to look fit and training to live well. You'll learn why the obsession with aesthetics can sometimes backfire, what sustainable health actually looks like, and how you can still build a strong, lean body without burning out or giving up your long-term goals. Welcome to Wits and Weights, the show that helps you build a strong, healthy physique using evidence, engineering, and efficiency. I'm your host, Philip Pape, and today I'm bringing you a special collaboration with Anna Clough, founder of Strong and Healthy and host of the Get Strong and Healthy podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Philip.
Yeah, no, it's awesome because I know our missions are pretty well aligned. I know your mission is to help women, step out of self-sabotage, get a sustainable, strong, vibrant life. And today we're going to talk about a big piece of that, right? Which is health and longevity, how to train, eat, and live for energy, for vitality, however we define it, even when you might have aesthetic goals. And so we're going to get into that in a second, but I do want the listener to know that we've actually covered this from two topics, two angles. The other angle is the aesthetic side. And I want you guys to check out Anna's podcast where she's interviewing me about that. It's Get Strong and Healthy. Look it up in your podcast app or click the link in the show notes. And again, you get two halves of the same conversation. So it's two for the price of one, right? Even though it's free. So go check out Get Strong and Healthy. But right now, let's dive into health and longevity. Anna, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you again. And I'm excited to dive into this topic today for our listeners. And I thought the best way to kind of kick this off is let's define what is health and longevity versus aesthetics. And to me, I feel like this is very, it's so obvious type of thing, but we have to remember we've been in the industry for, however many years, and not everyone knows what maybe aesthetics means. And so kind of what we're talking about is training and eating in terms of how we want to feel, how healthy we want to be in the long term of life, versus there's kind of another goal we can have, which is how can we look the best that we can possibly look right now type of thing. And there's a ton of overlap within both of these of how we get to these goals, but they are very different. And there are different nuances within how we can go about reaching the optimal place of these goals. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And it's also something where when I'm working with a client, when someone comes to me and they're like, I want to optimize my health, but, I want to get, say shredded for lack of a better word coming to my mind. And they have all these goals at once. It's something where you kind of have to have that conversation of love that, I'm the same way. I want it all. But especially in a short-term sense, we do kind of have to have the maybe like phases of prioritizing one over the other. If we're going to try and go for maximum aesthetics, there's going to be a little bit of sacrifice within your health. And if we're trying to go for optimizing our health, there probably is going to be a little bit of sacrifice when it comes to our aesthetic goals. And so that's a really good question for you listeners to sort of reflect on right now is what is most important to me right now? And where are you at with that? There's no right or wrong. There's just different considerations to both. And I think both of our episodes are going to be really, really beneficial to just help give you some clarity on how to reach these goals.
So I like that you added the time component, right? Because that is so critical. When we think of a goal, some people get overwhelmed, right? They're thinking, well, by the time I die, when I'm 100 or whatever age, like I want to live a long, healthy life, right? Don't we all? And I want to look good, don't we all? And what you said is, well, there's a time component, there's a phase or periodization component to it, and you have to prioritize. At the end of the day, would you say, can you have it all long term?
I would say yes, you can. I think where a lot of the issue goes is, especially when we're so excited about a fitness journey or a health journey, we're getting into this world. it's very exciting when we start to see progress, see results, and then we kind of want to have it all at once. I think that's where we need to really set expectations of, okay, like what's our focus right now? But in the long term, maybe we do a ton of work on your health. We maybe overcome some internal issues that we might have had going on. We get you to a really amazing place, and then we can get you to a really amazing place aesthetically where you feel amazing, but maybe talking in the sense of like maximum aesthetics in terms of like bodybuilding, I don't know, Olympia type level. Probably not. We can't really have it all there. But I would say that for most people who are general population, they want to look really good. They want to feel really good. You can absolutely have it all, especially in the long term.
Okay. So maybe we should scope what we mean by health and longevity specifically, because there's a lot of misnomer or misunderstanding, I think, around both. Like longevity is definitely a trigger word and a buzzword in the marketing industry. We were joking about like the 200 supplement stack, for longevity, and people that talk about how they're smashing, age related, their chronological health or whatever, this 80-year-old who's really like he's 40, all this, I'll call it nonsense in the industry, let's be honest. But it's the idea that you need all of these protocols and all this biohacking and the 1% solutions, the red light therapy. Is that what we're talking about, or is it something else? Leading question, I know.
Yeah, definitely not what we're talking about. There's a lot of extremes within just, the craziness of, just like all you said, all the supplements, all the crazy biohacking things, which, a lot of might have some merit to it. A lot of it might not. And even if things do have merit to it, it kind of comes down to what's really worth it in terms of, a time investment or an energy investment when it's maybe a marginal return that we're getting. And so definitely being skeptical of just the extremes on with anything, really. But yeah, when it comes to just being healthy, having long-term health, it's going to really come back to, as unsexy as it is, the foundations and the basics of, strength training, of nutrition, of, all right, let's talk about all these things, and we'll talk about how we can, optimize those things. And then maybe the fun, like biohacking tool here or there, the things that you feel make a great impact for you, those can be absolutely amazing, but as kind of like a cherry on top type of thing.
Okay, perfect. So then let's dive into specifics, starting with training. Because again, there's confusion as to how to train. And also what I've observed, you probably have as well, is like the idea of the principles of training supported by the evidence versus all the different methods of training, right? Like how many days per week and how do you train and what equipment and all that. Is there a difference between how you train for longevity versus aesthetics? And are those differences more the methods, or are there principles that actually differ? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, great question. I think that overall, when it comes to longevity, when it comes to just like anti-aging, strength training and resistance training, they're the same thing, but training for strength versus training for gaining muscle, both are going to be absolutely incredible. And I would say that you probably want to do a mix of both. And then when it comes to, you're going to talk more about aesthetics, but I would say it's probably the same kind of thing if we want to have those phases of, all things. And so that's sort of what I would say there. But overall, strength training is honestly your like anti-aging superpower. So when it comes to health, when it comes to living a long, healthy life of vitality, this is definitely what you want to be having as your foundation of how you train.
Yeah. And let's pull on that, right? So someone says, well, do I really need to resist? Now, preaching to the choir here. So I know we both know the answer, but someone says, do I really need to strength train? Because I heard longevity was more about like, you want to have healthy joints and mobility. You don't want to get injured. So what about the yoga? And let's not even get into cardio because that's a whole separate thing, but just some of the mental health practices and mindfulness stuff. Why is it, and walking, why is that not enough?
Yeah. I have a lot of yogis who come to me, and it's always really fun when, all they know is yoga and calm and stretching. And then I introduce them to strength training, resistance training. It's a whole nother world that is extremely necessary. And you want to have just that combination a lot of the times is going to be best, because if you're super into yoga, you might cause yourself some issues in terms of injury, in terms of just not strengthening your body in the way that it needs to. And it's unfortunately something I see a lot. And so we really want to be strong in terms of for, our joints, for our just muscle, especially if we're thinking long term, preventing falling, preventing, injuries as we age. There's some people that think, oh, I don't want to lift weights. I'm going to injure myself. It's like, no, that's the total flip. You want to get strong, lift weights safely, because that's what's going to prevent injury in the long term. And also, after about age 30, the science is very clear that we start to naturally lose muscle mass every year if we're not actively working to maintain it. And so, that is going to affect everything from your posture to your mobility, to your metabolism, to your hormones. And so there's really nothing more important, or maybe that's an extreme way of saying it, but it's extremely important to really make sure that you are resistance training, you are actively working to build muscle, get stronger, and overall just pursuing this as a part of your lifestyle.
We need more people to hear this, Anna. That's why, I don't mind talking about it every single episode till this podcast dies. What you just said is, the flip of what people think sometimes. Oh, I'm going to get injured, or oh, I have back pain or knee pain, and so I don't want to lift weights. And it's like, no, you start deadlifting, watch that back pain go away if you do it the right way.
Yes.
And your phrase, extremely necessary. I like that, because it's like a non-negotiable. It really is a non-negotiable for all that. And then the falling and the aging and the frailty it affects a lot of us. I don't know about you. I have in-laws and grandparents and parents and all that I see just decline fast when they get old because of the lack of muscle. Or it's the lack of function, but also lack of muscle. So since you brought that up, why is muscle mass so critical beyond the physical? You hinted at metabolism. I know there's things like insulin sensitivity and whatnot, but what are the big hitters there for health and longevity?
Yeah. So the more muscle mass you have, the more efficient your body is at handling blood sugar. So when you eat, carbs, your body's going to know how to handle those carbs. It's going to have the muscle mass to be able to, shuttle that glucose into your muscles and be able to utilize that for energy versus just kind of letting it sit in your bloodstream. And, so it's going to be better at handling blood sugar, insulin, and also just overall, it's going to help with inflammation, preventing too much inflammation in the long run. And so all of those things are extremely important when it comes to our health. And so muscle mass is really going to be the core piece to just make all of that much better.
Do you still get the pushback that I don't want to be too muscular, or it seems like it's just about vanity, things like that? Obviously, there's the bulky thing with women, but
yeah,
what do you get on that front?
Oh yeah, totally. I hear that. I hear that here and there. I feel like society is getting a little bit better at just, overcoming that misinformation. But I always like to just tell people up front, you don't have to worry about gaining too much muscle too quickly. A lot of us have been trying to do that for, I tell people I've been trying to do that for 10 years and it hasn't worked. I'm not there yet. I don't, it's not very easy to get bulky. It's very, very intentional. And you're not going to wake up one day and be like, oh my God, I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger. What do I do? So you'll be okay.
I joke about it all the time because I'm like, guys, I'm trying to chase physique goals. I didn't get started till I was 40, but it works, but it takes a lot of work, in a good way, because it's a process. It's a process. So you did mention injury risk. The other objection that I hear from folks that we kind of alluded to is I want to have more mobility, flexibility, or maybe I don't want to lift heavy because I think that can be a problem. And there are some risks versus benefits of heavier versus lighter training. What are your thoughts on somebody's just focused on longevity? They're like, I don't care how I look at all. I just want the best thing for me efficiently for my time.
Oh yeah. In terms of, what kind of training routine to implement?
Yeah. Do you like lifting heavy? I do, but not everybody says you have to, and the evidence supports there's a lot of flexibility, right, in terms of both strength and hypertrophy. So is there one that you lean toward with newer clients who are, say, 40s, 50s?
Yeah, great question. I would really at the start lean towards strength. I really love building a foundation of strength with clients. I think that for one, it's a little bit more rewarding at the start to really show clients, whoa, like I'm lifting objectively this much more than I was 6 weeks ago, and I'm blown away. And showing, especially I work with women most of the time, but showing women, showing people how strong they can get and how we can like sort of unlock that is really amazing from a psychology lens versus, we can build a good bit of muscle, but especially when I'm working with high achieving women, we tend to be a little bit critical on ourselves.
Mhm.
And I noticed that women will be like, oh yeah, I don't know, maybe it's there. I don't know, maybe it's not. And they'll kind of like downplay when we are making progress, or maybe it's just a little bit harder to tell. So that's why I would say, from one lens, why I really love strength training, but also thinking about when we are like lifting heavy and we're really pushing, that's going to be extremely beneficial for also our bones. That was one thing that I meant to mention previously, is our bone health is also really important to think about. And it's something that I don't think a lot of people do think about. And so knowing that resistance training, lifting heavy, this is going to prevent our bones from degrading. And I have a woman that I met a few weeks ago. She's in her early 40s, and the doctor told her she has osteopenia. And
Mhm.
I asked her, first question I asked her, do you resistance train? She said, no, I don't work out. I hate working out.
Of course, I hate working out.
And I was like, oh yeah, me too. I don't like working out. I try to like, really make sure I can relate with that sort of stuff. But just it goes to show the importance of lifting, the importance of training for our bones, especially in the long term. So that's going to be a huge thing there.
I think that's great. The bone density, the osteoporosis piece of it. I mean, I personally believe like when you're older and you've never lifted before, like that probably is the most efficient and best use of your time anyway, because of all these benefits. Plus, you're going to build muscle anyways from doing it. The idea of not liking working out, I mean, you just mentioned what potentially is the fix for that is when you make progress and you get that reward of feeling stronger, more functional, you're going to start liking working out more. Maybe it's still hard, right? Maybe it's still hard, but there's just a deep satisfaction from that you don't get from YouTube workouts where you're just sweating with 10-pound dumbbells and there's like no progress, right? Just to put a little imagery on that.
That's another thing to note is actually specifically this woman too. She's like, I think I'm going to start with doing some YouTube workouts again, and kind of had to come in with like, I want to make sure that that's actually enough, right? Because a lot of the times the workout videos or just, something like that where you're just exercising, maybe like a class where you're lifting the same weights every week, like that's really maybe not going to so much do it for you. And it's going to be something where we want to make sure we are resistance training properly, progressing you week after week, that we're really challenging your body in the way that we need to challenge it. And so that's just something else to note, is that, not all methods are created equal. However, we love any form of exercise. I'm not trying to discourage anyone from exercising, but making sure that if longevity is really important to you, if aesthetics are, of importance to you, it's going to be really important that you maybe skip the YouTube workout and
Yeah.
you get some real good programming in your life.
I can see why you're a great coach, Anna, right? Because you have that level of empathy and like, I'm going to meet you where you are, but let's use some logic, some your goals that you have, and shift you toward, hey, if you want to get from A to B, this is the most effective tool for the job. Real quick, do you have a preference for like barbell training versus machines, cables, and some blend of free weights?
Yeah. So personally, I prefer really focusing on more dumbbell work, especially when someone's a bit newer, and just really being able to build some stability, being able to, learn different movements before we can get into, using a barbell, which is going to be starting at a little bit heavier weight. And so that's typically really starting with dumbbell work. However, if a client is dealing with maybe some sort of pain or, some sort of specific issues, sometimes it might make more sense to really lean into machines for a bit, and just utilizing a little bit more stability. Slash, maybe I'm working with an older client who, maybe they're not able to see me in person and I'm maybe writing workouts for them. That's a time where I might utilize machines more so. So I'm kind of all over the place with that answer, but
no, that's good. Because you're right. A lot of it can work and you've got to meet them where they are. And if a client doesn't even have access to X or Y, it's either do it or don't do it, then that's not a good, that binary is not a good option, right? You want them to do something that gets them there.
Yeah. And I love like a little bit more of just a functional training style where, a lot of the people that I'm working with, they don't have, 5+ days in the week where they're able to get their mix of, lack of stability training, through like dumbbell work and things like that. And then also doing machines. It's something where it's like, what's going to be the most bang for our buck type of thing. And so I think that I would definitely say leaning towards free weights, barbell/dumbbell is going to be where I'd want most people to be.
Yeah, it makes total sense. So then let's segue into nutrition, because that's the other big piece. And we could spend a lot of time talking about that and longevity and health. Let's see. Do we start with the fueling that aligns with your training and how that can also support health? Like, I'm not sure. Or do we start with like restrictive dieting versus flexible dieting?
I know
you take it away. Like, what makes the most sense here when we're thinking health? Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many angles to come at this from. I totally agree. I'm like, where do we start? But what I would say first off is when it comes to vitality, when it comes to feeling really good now and in the long term, it's really about less of restriction and eating less and more about eating smarter, such as having protein with every meal, having, colorful whole foods in your diet, making sure you're staying hydrated to really, support your hormones, your energy, and your recovery. And just also like thinking of eating to fuel, right? I see so often people are maybe just really under eating during the day or even around their training, and then maybe are leading to so many, cravings or just overeating later. And in the long run, we're gaining weight due to that. And so just overall trying to find a way to eat that's going to support your body during the day, that's going to be balanced, that's going to not be such a maybe extreme of, okay, we're yo-yo dieting, we're crash dieting really hard, putting all that stress on your body, and then we're rebounding, right? Like we see a lot of people do. And so if the goal is fat loss, making sure that you're approaching it the right way. We're not eating way too little. And that's going to just put you in a worse spot long term. I know that that's how I started my journey of just eating way too little. I was, an athlete at the time, and I think I set myself at 1,500 calories. And no wonder I had like binge eating tendencies coming out from that. And that swung me in the other way, leading me to even worse health. And so we really want to sort of avoid those extremes with things and make sure that we're just taking the right approaches to nutrition to make sure that we're not affecting our health.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. I mean, smarter and not being extreme. It's antithesis to how everything's marketed with the weight loss industry, where people want results now, but the result now, maybe tell the listener, why is going after like rapid weight loss or weight loss at all costs or not a smart way to weight loss not good for your health and longevity?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. Because again, there's so many components to that. I think that first, from just a physiological stance, your body's going to really fight you in terms of that. When you crash diet so quickly, you lose a ton of weight, your body's going to be under so much stress. And at the end of the day, your body doesn't want to change like that. It wants to stay the same. It wants to feel safe. It doesn't want to have all this, this stressor. And so if you put that big stress on your body, you change really, really quick, you're going to have your hunger cues really fighting you. You're going to have your probably like food noise and cravings really starting to fight you there. And then overall, like your hormones might, tank, your metabolism, those different things that, just from that stress, your body's like, hey, I don't care about producing optimal hormones right now. I'm trying to survive with whatever this person's doing. I don't know why I'm not getting fuel. I'm going to start, kind of shutting down and conserving whatever energy I can. So that's how you can kind of think about like what your body's doing and why it's so important to come at things from a, periodized sort of long-term lens of maybe you have a big goal of losing a lot of weight. Amazing. Maybe instead of going really hard, really fast, doing it all at once, we make sure to add in some diet breaks in there, to add in, a proper reverse, add in some just maintenance days, and making sure that we can give your body those feelings of safety first and foremost, just helping boost your metabolism. And so, definitely not crash dieting, not going on those crazy fad diets is going to be really important to overall just maintaining good health.
Yeah, I think you tied a couple concepts there really well. First, I think is the idea that yes, many people need to drop some excess body fat from a health perspective, but the way that they do it is extremely important. And you're talking about being reasonable, taking the right glide path or the rate of loss, and not just because it avoids, like you said, the metabolic effects, but it does help along the way with getting it done successfully, like not having the hunger and the food noise and the cravings, which is tied to sleep and recovery and stress. It's so interconnected. And you just mentioned safety, which is like the 5th time in the last month I've had a guest on where we got into that. And I don't know if I'm hearing it more or just like the word is getting around, because I'm sure you've talked about it a long time. I'm just saying I notice, Anna, the more discussion around that and like homeostasis, safety, giving your body some love. Let's say someone figures that out. They hire you and figure it out, or they listen to the podcast. And where do they want to end up? And what I mean by that is, yes, we have periodization, but one of the confusing aspects people say is, well, I kind of want to end up lean, right? And I want to look good and feel good and also live a long life. But can you get too lean where it's not healthy? And also, what am I trying to say here, Anna? I'm trying to say, here's my experience. When I get too lean and it's difficult to do that, it's not a place I want to necessarily sustain. I actually want to like come back up a little. If that makes sense. Like I want to have a little bit of fat on my body and kind of be in that walking lean. Like, what are your thoughts on that whole concept of what's the long game here for health?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, my name is Lisa, and I'd like to give a big shout out to my nutrition coach, Philip. With his coaching, I have lost 17 pounds. He helped me identify the reason that I wanted to lose weight, and it's very simple: longevity. I want to be healthy, active, and independent until the day I die. He introduced me to this wonderful little app called Macro Factor. I got that part of my nutrition figured out. Along with that is the movement part of nutrition. There's a plan to it, and he really helped me with that. The other thing he helped me with was knowing that I need to get a lot of steps in. So the more steps you have, the higher your expenditure is, and the easier it is to lose weight. When it's presented to you like he presents it, it makes even more sense. And the other thing that he had was a hunger guide, and that really helped me. So thank you, Philip.
There's, I think, a lot of what we're seeing online, especially nowadays, there's a lot of glamorization just about being ultra shredded, lean, and
10-pack.
Yeah. And just as a good reminder for everyone, it's something we always have to remind ourselves is just because someone is really, really lean does not mean that they are thriving or they're really healthy. And I've been this myself. I've seen women do this a lot where, they're under eating, they're overtraining, they're constantly fatigued, and they look really fit on the outside. But, just remembering that true health is internal. It's how you're sleeping. It's how your digestion is working. If your cycle is regular, if you have energy, if you feel strong, if you feel grounded, all that sort of stuff. And so you can absolutely get lean and be healthy, but just remembering that they don't always equal each other. But I would say that, especially for women, but also for men, being totally peeled, meaning like bodybuilding stage ready, that's not going to be a healthy place to be for anyone. And so, just making sure you do have a healthy amount of body fat. We're not too lean, but also just remembering that, like, I'll give a personal example. I was at this weight that I am now a few years ago, And I felt extremely hungry. I felt cold all the time. I felt so many cravings and this hyperfixation about food. It felt very unhealthy for me. And so, I gained weight, was able to, get past some of those issues. And I just thought to myself, I guess I'm just not meant to be that lean. But recently I've been able to get this lean and not have those issues that I did before because of the methods that I've been taking. And so that's a little caveat just to think about, is try not have that fixed mindset about, oh, just because I felt this way when I was lean means I have to feel that way next time. Because just where your body's at hormonally, where your body's at in all the ways, the methods that you take to get there are going to matter a ton. And what I've done now is being able to really work on my blood sugar regulation, which, oh my gosh, if you guys have it, that's a nice, a little bit more in the biohacker world type in my eyes, but it's just a really amazing health tool to be able to track your blood sugars. And how you can do that is take a fasted blood sugar reading with a little blood sugar reader device first thing in the morning. And you can see what your fasted blood sugars are. And then also you want to get some readings post-prandial. So 2 hours or so after you eat, actually after your last bite of food, set a 2-hour timer, take your blood sugar and see where it's coming to. For, people who are really stressed, you're training really hard. Like me, I've been an athlete for a long time, and I, put pressure on myself in terms of business and all that, fun stuff. That really led me to just having dysregulated blood sugar. And I think probably for a while, and I didn't even know it. And that was a really big key for me to say, all right, I need to heal this. And that's what's gotten rid of so many cravings for me, helped me just come to a much better place. And so that's a really nice tool to use if you'd be interested in trying that out. I highly recommend. I actually just got a CGM, continuous glucose monitor, to try out. I hear a lot of conflicting things about the accuracy. However, I'm kind of looking at it as, okay, even if it's not accurate, you're going to be able to see the differences and see, the changes. So, my coach told me we're going to add 5 to 10 points to each reading. Just, that's what we typically do. So that's what I'm currently doing. And that's just been a big catalyst for my journey, but I'm so off track from what the question even was.
And we don't need to pick it back up. It's okay. Just to pull on that thread a bit, I do love the idea of, okay, if the advice is to eat more fiber and balance your macros and balance meals, because the result is it helps with your blood sugar, just one way to do it. It's nice to have data and trends that kind of correlate. Okay, this is what happens when I do this, not get freaked out because I ate potatoes and my blood sugar spiked. Right.
Yes.
So, in fact, Holly Baxter was on the show, right? IFBB Bikini Pro. She's awesome. And she talked about using the calories burned from your wearable and exercise, which originally I was like, oh no, what's she going to say? She's like, using the trend of that over time and how it changes to see how active you are and how much volume you have. I'm like, oh, that's cool. The number is not accurate at all, but for you, the trend over time could tell you something. So exactly. It's the right way. So in the interest of time, because I know we're trying to keep these 2 episodes reasonable, can I do 3 rapid fire questions for you?
Yeah, go off.
All right. So the first one, which is kind of a big side topic, but what's the best way to improve cardiovascular health and markers like, resting heart rate?
Oh yeah. So walk, do some sort of cardio that you enjoy. If that is biking, that is some hiking, if that is, whatever that might be for you. And then potentially some interval type training, some high intensity type training. Even just a few minutes per week is an amazing way to improve your cardiovascular fitness.
Cool. Just don't overdo the cardio, right?
Yeah, don't overdo it. It's a great complement to strength as being your base.
How do you lower cholesterol? So that's a marker of health everybody and their doctor knows to look at. How do you do that? Lower your lipids, your LDL.
Yeah. Great question. So first off, nutrition is going to be huge. Overall, just I mean, improving all of these different factors is going to lead to that, right? Like such a holistic approach is going to be really what's going to help with that.
And what is your favorite habit framework?
Habit framework. Ooh, like as in
building habits. I know there's so many ways to approach it. Yeah,
absolutely. So where my brain went immediately was habit stacking. Love habit stacking. Love taking a habit that you already do every single day and pairing that with something you're trying to build. That is going to make it stick. That's going to make it so much easier. So if you're trying to implement something, find something you already do and just do both same time.
Love it. Love habit stacking. That's a great tip for folks. Just if they say, I don't have time for that. No, you're doing something else that you can stack. All right. So kind of to recap, it sounds like if you do the right things for your body in terms of taking a reasonable approach, strength training, eating nutritious foods and protein, keeping the stress management there, getting enough sleep. Guess what? All the things you and I talk about all the time, it's going to give you health and longevity, and it's probably going to make you look good too. So I know if you love today's conversation, again, go check out Anna's show, Get Strong and Healthy. What a simple, easy to remember name for a podcast, where we're going to talk about the aesthetic side of this, and you're going to hear some overlap for sure, but there's always little differences. Is there any last thing about health and longevity that you really wanted to cover that we didn't get to?
Yeah, I think really just making sure you're coming at your journey from thinking about building a sustainable lifestyle. At the end of the day, we can take some fun, short-term strategies, but we also need to make sure that we are showing up for these different values we have of taking care of ourselves, eating well, working out, training, whatever, in the long run, and making sure that you can just keep this up so that you can be strong and healthy today and for the longevity.
Sustainability, the underlying glue that binds all of this. Ask yourself if what you're doing is. If it isn't, something might be able to change, and do everything Anna's suggesting. It doesn't take a lot to incorporate those and get a massive result for your effort. So thank you again, Anna, for doing this. Again, I'm excited for the collaboration. Glad we got to talk through at least the basics. It's a big topic, I know. Go find Anna's podcast, Get Strong and Healthy. Use the link in the show notes. And Anna, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.